We may never discover the famous alien ET, but it may surprise a lot of you. It did certainly surprise a lot of us. The Vatican is looking to the heavens for signs of life.
Yes, David. 400 years after the church locked up Galileo for challenging the view that the Earth was the center of the universe, the Catholic Church is exploring if life exists elsewhere in the universe. And astronomers, physicists, and priests are in Rome this week to debate the age-old question, if we are, or are we, really alone? And Dan Gilgoff covers religion for U.S. News and World Report. Dan, early this morning, this 8 o'clock, David and I are all happy about this story. This is our story. We love this one. Dan, by the way, is the author of The Jesus Machine. So, you know, so many times the Catholic Church especially, and religion in general, is seen as being behind the times. It seems like a very progressive conversation to be having. What are they really looking at here?
It is. You know, the church has come a long way. As David mentioned, you know, they locked up Galileo. Before Galileo, about 35 years prior, there was actually an Italian philosopher who was burned at the stake for suggesting that there was extraterrestrial life. Now, here we are, 400 years later. Yeah. And the church is inviting these same exact folks, this guy, the same time who was burned at the stake, to the Vatican for this conference on whether the extraterrestrial life exists. I think it really speaks to this Pope and this Pope's efforts to reconcile faith and reason. And this is a high-profile way that he's trying to do this.
There was a statement from Reverend Jose Briel Funes, and it says, just as there is a multitude of creatures on earth, there could be other beings, even intelligent ones created by God. This does not contradict our faith because we cannot put limits on God's creative freedom. But is there something in the Bible that they can point to? I'm not an expert on the Bible, but is there something that might, and David, I know you're surprised to hear that I'm not an expert on the Bible, but is there something that they can point to that would back this up in the good book?
Well, you know, it depends what tradition you're talking about. And I think this is really interesting because it points up a divide right now between the Roman Catholic Church, who says, hey, we could live and our theology could coexist with extraterrestrial life. You look at the evangelical church in the United States, and by the way, in the United States, say 40% of the people believe in evolution. The church, the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, earlier this year, sponsors a conference on the 150th anniversary of Darwin's landmark work. So I think it points out some differences in religious traditions taking different postures to science. But in this case, Vatican says, hey, yeah, we could live with extraterrestrial life. God's okay with that.
You know, Dan, it's so interesting to imagine that you know, the religious people would say, okay, yeah, this is great, this is all part of God's work. But I guess I have a question. You mentioned the Pope in particular, Pope Benedict. Is he a UFO enthusiast or alien enthusiast that we know of?
No, not that I know of. It's interesting, though, because, you know, on the one hand, some of this stuff could be hard to reconcile. The Pope, on his way to Africa earlier this year, says things like the spread of condoms could actually expedite the spread of AIDS. Seems to be kind of anti-social science, at least in some ways. And in an instance like this, he's embracing Darwin. He's embracing the possibility of life on other planets. And so you see this Pope doing something very interesting, really trying to update the Church in one way, like with this conference, and also really hewing to traditions on some questions like birth control and condoms. So taking the church in different directions when it comes to different issues, but all revolving around science.
And what's been the response to this from many Catholics around the world as this news spreads that this conference is happening?
Yeah, I think it's been a little bit mixed. There are some Catholics in America who feel like the church might be going too far in embracing science. But I think for the most part, Catholics really pride themselves in a robust intellectual tradition, and the Vatican has long been associated with that itself. And so I think a lot of Catholics are actually proud that in this instance, religion is not seen to be the enemy of science, but actually an ally.
Interesting. Well, David,
wow.
On the 8th day, God created E.T.
Right.
Yeah, I just, you know, the Vatican may have a problem, Tamron and Dan, if you know, E.T. ever does show up and says, no, you really should use condoms, then...
Oh, gosh, David.
Then what? I mean, do you believe the aliens? Do you believe your own preachings? I don't know.
Yeah. They'll have to cross that bridge when they come to it. And
if we come to that, Dan. Dan Gilgoff, the author of The Jesus Machine. Thank you for our commentary and questions, David.
Sure,
it's interesting. I think it's a phenomenal discussion. I can't wait to hear what they say after this conference, David.